From the latest on Caribbean cruises to kosher safaris, pilgrimages to Jewish Eastern Europe, and award-winning wines and international cuisine in sun-drenched Tel Aviv. Sit back and enjoy the trip with the travel edition of the Jerusalem Post podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, at home and our live audience, whether you're listening or watching on video, good evening, welcome to you, come and have a seat. Somebody's just joining the audience. This is our 5th anniversary podcast. What episode, do you know? Well, we don't know what episode number it's going to be yet, do we, Mark?
120 something.
120 something. So that's how many times we've been doing this. And we have a live audience because we are in the beautiful Israeli Riviera city of Netanya. And we are with the Hitachdut Olei Britannia. Have I got it right? HOB, people who've made Aliyah from the United Kingdom.
And Algeria.
Oh, yes, as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, just to prove that you're here, give yourselves a nice round of applause. Okay, what we're going to be doing over the next hour or so is taking a whistle-stop tour of our beautiful blue-green planet. Most of what we'll talk about will have something to do with Judaism around the world, to do with Israel, but all of it coming from the perspective of travel and tourism. We'll give you a lot of happy memories, maybe one or two tears, because as we know, the Jewish story around the world is not always the happiest, but what we do, and we'll explain, is we try to focus on the good more than the bad. What we always start our podcast with is a quiz question. Think about it, because maybe we'll come to you for the answer at the end of the podcast, not now. It's something to think about. Mark, quiz question.
Quiz question. As we are in the beautiful seaside resort of Netanya, why is it called Netanya?
Ooh. Got your thinking caps on? There are knowing nods in the audience.
The answer at the end of the pod.
Beautifully done.
Thank you.
This is Mark Gordon from the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
Who's heard of Yas Island? Okay, that's a good start. Having got the go-ahead from the Jerusalem Post, we were told we need to bring out a podcast at least once every 2 weeks. And we had 3 interviews, which lasted a week and a half. So we wrote to everybody we could. January, February 2021, there's another wave of COVID. Everybody's been sent home again. We were planning this podcast. It was just going to be interviews. We were looking for interesting people to talk to. There was a travel trade fair that happens every year in Tel Aviv, and people used to come from all over the neighboring countries where Israeli planes went to. And in talking to these people, they had an online trade fair that year because no one could actually fly there. Suddenly out of the blue, I get a message from a lady on a place called Yas Island. Yas Island is in Abu Dhabi. This is 4 or 5 months after the Abraham Accords have been signed. And she says, do you want to come to Yas Island? Yas Island is essentially Abu Dhabi's version of Orlando. It's half a dozen theme parks, a dozen massive hotels, shopping malls, beaches, restaurants. There's an arena, golf course. It really, if you get a chance to go there, it's worth a visit. And at the time, the hotel was doing kosher food. A couple of catering companies started up and you could order kosher food to be delivered to the hotel like you can on an airline or like you can on a cruise ship. And they were doing that in Yas Island. The only problem was we couldn't get there because there were no flights. As it happened, the following month, Wizz Air Abu Dhabi launched in Abu Dhabi, and one of their first destinations was Tel Aviv. I got a call again on the back of that travel fair saying, do you want to come and meet the chief executive of Wizz and interview him? Just using a bit of chutzpah, I said, do you know what? If we could go to Abu Dhabi and I interview him there because you've got planes flying back and forth, would that be okay? And they said, yeah, sure, come, both of you, to Abu Dhabi. So all of a sudden, out of nothing, we've got our first ever trip to Abu Dhabi with Wizz, and we've got somewhere to stay for 3 days. So that was our first overseas podcast sometime in May 2021.
We are always asked, people don't know these days, do you want to share a room? And then the next question is, do you want a double bed? And our answer is always, we want to be in separate hotels from each other, as far away from each other. He snores. And I complain about him snoring.
That's not true, is it? There's no one in the audience that can say I can snore.
So in that particular hotel, we had the sort of bridal or royal suites, one in either wing of the hotel. We could have slept all of you in one of those places. It was incredible. The Hilton in Yas Island, amazing.
And being an island with not many tourists because of COVID, we were one of about 20 guests in a hotel with room for about 1,000, which is lovely to have that freedom. But when you're in the restaurant and you're trying to eat, a waiter comes up every 2 minutes because they've got nothing else to do and go, is that all right? So it took us a couple of hours to finish dinner. The trip to Yas Island was amazing. They organised things that we couldn't ordinarily do. This is the Yas Island Formula One circuit, and we are in racing gear. And we said, look, we need a bit of culture. And Sadia Island, next to Yas Island, has a number of museums. There's a Guggenheim there, there's the Louvre, there's the National Museum. So we said, we want to go to the Louvre. I've never been to the Louvre in Paris, take us to the Louvre. So they did, except it wasn't open that day. So the only way you could get into the Louvre was by canoeing.
Under it.
We were in the same canoe, weren't we?
As you can imagine from having watched us for 2 minutes on this podcast, we are not exactly the most coordinated pair in the world. It was a disaster. The amount of times we almost flipped over, and you're in a group with about another 10 boats and they're all way ahead of us, laughing at us.
In all my conversations, the most successful conversation I was having at the beginning was with the Polish Tourist Authority. Tourism to Poland is a big, big thing for Poland.
You mean tourism from Israel
From
to
Israel
Poland?
to Poland. The Polish Tourism Authority invests a lot of money, has an office here, permanent employees here. I think we've done 4 trips.
At least,
Four trips, and we're going to a 5th one next year.
Hopefully.
Which is good for me because I'm, I think, quarter half Polish.
I'm a good half Polish.
And it was a chance to go and see our roots a bit and see what Poland is in 2021 as it was.
Yeah.
The first trip we did, everywhere you went, they show you the history before the Shoah. They show you what's there now. Our first trip started in a place called Tarnów, and we ended in a place called Zamość. One of the things we do on our podcast regularly is slaughter foreign languages and say everything wrong. But everywhere we went, there were signs of the past, signs of Jewish life. In Tarnów in particular, this place is called Bima. It was where the Bima was in the old shul. There is a non-Jewish guy who is responsible for looking after it, although I think he married someone Jewish. His daughter was Jewish.
His daughter converted, Adam Bartosz. His daughter converted to Judaism, and they have, it's not, I don't even want to call it a business, they have a family charity of looking after the Jewish cemetery, including a mass grave from the Holocaust, and looking after and promoting the Bima and Jewish cultural activities in this town where no Jews have lived for many, many years.
We were very lucky. The mayor of Tarnów, or the president, I think he's called, was invited to this ceremony that was taking place at Bima. And afterwards, we had Friday night dinner with him. And we were the 2 Jews there, so we had to make hamotzi and make kiddush.
The wine was kosher, but there was challah that they'd made that clearly wasn't. But because we felt it was right and important and respect for the leader of the local town, and because we're ambassadors, we did the whole thing with singing Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals, and it was a very special experience.
The restaurant was actually on the site of the old bathhouse, the Schwitz, had been converted into a Jewish restaurant.
Do you remember the name of the square?
The square was called Auschwitz Square.
And not because of us, because the first people to be sent to Auschwitz were Polish, non-Jews, who were either soldiers or political prisoners who were sent. And if you've been to Auschwitz 1, you will see the place where they were hanged.
But these restaurants are very common in Poland. Some of them are in it just for the profit, and some of them grandchildren of people that survived in Poland, people with Jewish roots that want to try and keep it going. Is a beer that we had in a restaurant in Lublin called Madragora, and the beer is called Kosher Macha. It's a very nice beer, actually.
The restaurant was not in any way, shape or kosher, but if you went there, you would recognise every single thing on the menu from your childhood.
Chopped herring, schmaltz, the
More
works.
herring, liver, you name it.
If you get to Lublin, this is what was the Yeshivas Chochmei Lublin. It was a yeshiva set up in 1930 by Rabbi Meir Shapiro. If you've ever heard of Daf Yomi, He was the founder of Daf Yomi, and this was his yeshiva. Sadly, it didn't last very long. It was closed in 1938, but because it was such a big building, it was used by the Nazis as a hospital. It was returned to the Jewish community, I think in Warsaw, who have converted it to a hotel called the Ilan Hotel. And currently, I think it hosts about 200 Ukrainian families.
I was there with a group of 150 Jewish young people 2 months ago, and I said the afternoon prayer. I davened mincha in the synagogue that is still there today. And fascinatingly, particularly for this audience in front of us, our live audience, people from all around the world have donated Sidurim prayer books to be in there. And the vast majority of them are singers' prayer books. There's a whole load from Terenure in Dublin. There's some from Newcastle. Heaven knows how they got there. But there's loads and loads of singers' prayer books, of the old ones, where mincha starts on page 99. The Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition.
They would always say he has a sword in one hand and a marriage contract in the other.
Sancocho is made only with 3 ingredients, ñame, culantro, and also with chicken.
I had the hot stone massage. Either that or I left a couple of empanadas on my back.
Come for the destination and stay for the banter. The Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition.
Vilnius was our next trip at the end of 2021. Vilnius again has multiple flights, 6 or 7 flights a week now from Israel. Israelis go there en masse. It's a very popular destination.
It's beautiful. The country is stunningly beautiful. We've only seen a small part of it.
And again, the Lithuanian Tourist Board have put a lot of money into restoring some of the heritage in and around Vilnius. The Jewish ghetto as it was doesn't exist, but if you walk around it, it's a very smart shopping area. There are some Jewish businesses there, some jewelers, and all over the walls are these little pictures.
These are based on photographs of how the Jewish area looked 100 years ago. And they've taken artists and they've recreated the scenes on the walls of the Jewish neighborhood. In a way, it's very beautiful.
If you are in Vilnius, can I recommend going to the Independent Republic of Uzbekistan?
And he's not joking.
Whose head of state is the Dalai Lama. It's just this really weird section of the centre of Vilnius, very artistic. There are plaques all down one road with the 20 commandments, the laws of Uzbekistan, including in Hebrew, Arabic, English, every other language under the sun. David and I are not big fans of heights, especially David. So obviously the tourist board put us in a hot air balloon.
That was, I think, for both of us, more than the motor racing. That was our best experience.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, other than when it crashed. And I landed on my arm.
I landed on two beautiful French women. There were 4 of us in a basket. He landed on the side and on me, but that was okay because I just landed on this amazing pillow. I was enjoying myself while the poor guy was going, get off me.
One of those French women's just had a baby, by the way.
Oh, congrats. Which one?
Hopefully it's nothing to do with you.
It was an amazing experience, stunningly beautiful. Have any of you in the audience been in a hot air balloon? The peace, the quiet. Every so often you hear, and then there's nothing. Remarkable experience. The 2 of us realise we're very, very lucky, especially with our wives.
Yes.
No, that actually a really serious point because we need to give credit to our wives and our kids because it takes a certain person to allow us to disappear as much as we do. And we are very, very grateful, really.
And that's when my wife gets sleep from my snoring. But while we were in Lithuania, we went to this wonderful place called Trakai. There's a group of people there who are They're like Jews. They're called Karaites. They date back, I think, to Turkey in the 13th, 14th century, and then they scattered around Europe. The Karaites have places of worship called Knesiyas, like a Bet Knesset, and a lot of what they follow is very similar to Judaism. They allowed us to cook in one of their restaurants, and they have a drink there called krupnik, which is not barley soup, but it is a very lovely
the
drink.
reason they ended up in Lithuania, apparently they were amazing warriors and guards, and they became the personal guards of the king back in, I think, the 13th century.
Next place we went to, Barcelona. We were very lucky. We struck up a relationship with Royal Caribbean, who were going to launch a ship here in 2021 called Odyssey of the Seas. Because Israel was the first country that vaccinated everybody, they thought they could come here. However, the Israeli government refused to vaccinate their crew, so that whole thing fell apart. But Royal Caribbean were very grateful to us and took us on a cruise at the end of 2022, I think, 2021.
You're the numbers man.
it went from Rome to Barcelona, so we ended up in Barcelona at the end of it. There is very little Jewish in Barcelona to see. Most of it was destroyed in the 14th century during the Inquisition. But in the middle of all of it is this little place called Casa Aderet, which is a Jewish community centre. Astruch Aderet was a Jewish businessman who was forced to sell the property and convert to Catholicism.
How do you remember this stuff?
It's written down there.
Oh, right. Okay.
The old city, the Kai as it's called, there is a street in the middle of it that used to be called St. Dominic Street, but it was renamed Salamo Ben Aderet Street when the mayor of Barcelona decided he wanted to be more Jewish friendly. Gerta is still open, just. Gerta is a Michelin-starred restaurant in Barcelona.
Not kosher.
Ah, well, you say that. Michelin-starred kosher restaurant.
No.
Yes, sort of. So
Come on, what do you mean?
Gerta is a non-kosher restaurant. But they
That's what I said.
Yeah, I know. But they decided that there was a market in Jewish tourists coming to a Michelin-starred restaurant. There is no other Michelin-starred kosher restaurant, as far as I know, in the world. There are about 6 or 7 with Israeli chefs. None of them are kosher. This one is kosher. The chef has a separate room upstairs. And in the past, there were certain days when it was open and you could come in and they would bring in a mashgiach, a shomer, to look after the food. And you could just go in there and have a wonderful 6-course kosher meal, complete with kosher champagne. Oh, you left, didn't you?
I didn't go there. You were all on your own here.
I stayed one more day and it was a real pleasure. I think now you have to book in advance and you have to have enough people with you. But it's Gerta, spelt with an X at the beginning, in Barcelona.
Something we've learnt with fine dining is if you're only going to have 2 courses, you're going to go home hungry. But if somebody else is paying, because we can't afford it, and you're getting a 10-course meal, even though every portion is small, you come out feeling incredibly sated.
You're looking over £100 for that, €130. I think the meal was back then. I don't know how much it is now. It's not cheap, especially with the champagne on top. So while you're in Barcelona, head north for an hour, and there are 2 other wonderful places, Figueres and Girona. Does anybody know what Figueres is famous for? Cool. Figueres is the home of Salvador Dali. There is a Salvador Dali museum in Figueres. He is buried inside that museum. It was an old theatre, so that's where Salvador Dali is. While we were there, upstairs on the top floor, there was an exhibition called Aliyah, and it was commissioned by David Ben-Gurion. He asked Salvador Dali to paint 20-odd paintings to celebrate Israel's 20th year in 1968. I believe that exhibition is now touring and not in Figueres, but it's a really interesting exhibition. That's one painting. Does anybody recognise that painting? Do you know where you would see that menorah? It's currently in Israel somewhere.
It's in the Knesset.
No, but it's very similar to the one in the Knesset.
It's outside Ben Gurion Airport. When you come out of arrivals,
near the train station.
Girona, which is half an hour from Figueres, is beautiful. We were there during the Flower Festival. They have done a really good job of preserving the Jewish history and the Jewish story in Girona.
Of all the places that we went to from a Jewish perspective, you can't say the most unique because that's poor English, but the one that was unique was Girona, because when you're travelling around Ashkenazi Europe, it's a shtetl, it's another shtetl, this was a shul, that was a shul, and here you are with a massive, huge Catholic cathedral, and you walk a few steps away from it and they say, this is a house where we believe the rabbi lived. And then you go down a narrow alley and there's a question whether this was a mikveh or not. It was a very different way of seeing the Jewish world. And also, because Mark and I happen to be Ashkenazi Jews, it's fascinating to dip into something that was a bit different, even though, of course, historically, many or most Ashkenazi Jews find their roots in Mediterranean Europe. And many of us who think we're Polish and whatever, go back 1,000 years ago, there's a very good chance we were from Spain.
And Girona is also the home of the Ramban,
Nachmanides.
or as the Jerusalem Post called him, Nachman Diaz. We were invited to Turkey in 2022. Israel had just restored diplomatic relations with Turkey. Turkey had a cultural attaché here, and again, they were looking to bring more and more Israelis to Turkey to see different parts of Turkey. And one of the places they wanted people to come to was not Istanbul and Izmir, where all the Jews are. It was Kars in eastern Turkey, next to the border with Armenia, because they're developing a ski resort there. It is beautiful.
It's wild. It's remote.
Yeah. Ani is an old settlement from the 11th century. It's a UNESCO heritage site, and in winter, in the snow, These churches and these mosques and these buildings look absolutely stunning.
And you've got Mount Ararat, where supposedly Noah's Ark landed, is off in the distance, mountains all around. You know, we were talking about the idea of the hot air balloon and that peace. You get the same thing here. The only thing you can hear is the wind whipping around and the snow being shifted. Phenomenal experience.
We didn't find a lot Jewish there, but we think Kars was on the Silk Road, and we found this little street of former shops.
Yes.
And in one shop, there were 2 Magen Davids.
Like the Cardo in Jerusalem, same idea. Just in the middle of nowhere.
And boy, is it cold there.
It was minus 17 when we were there, Celsius.
We are on troikas on a lake, Lake Childeer, and part of the trip involved going fishing.
We thought that they're going to cut a hole in the ice. They did. That we would get the opportunity to dip a string with a fish on the end or a maggot or something down and have that experience. They had a better idea.
Somebody cut the hole and then got this piece of string, and lo and behold, this massive fish came out.
Problem was, the fish was dead. So they showed it to us. They popped it back in, pulled the string again so it went back the other way for the next gullible tourists 5 minutes later.
Bit disappointing, but it really, really was an eye-opener being there. I mentioned Abu Dhabi at the beginning. I think the place I've been to most in the last 5 years, partly with work and partly with the podcast, is the United Arab Emirates. We've been to 4 of the Emirates. We've been to Sharjah. We went to that wonderful health clinic where we escaped because we were so hungry at the end of it because we were on a special diet. We've been to Dubai a lot. Dubai is the #1 tourist destination out of Israel in 2025. It used to be Istanbul, now it's Dubai. Like Abu Dhabi, because it's the UAE, there was a massive effort to have kosher food available everywhere. We went to a hotel complex called Al Habtoor City. There were 3 hotels, a Hilton, a W, and something called Al Habtoor Palace. It had its own kosher kitchen between the 3 of them. It had a Bet Knesset in there, so you could go and daven. It had its own kosher breakfast area. Really, really impressive hotel. It had a kosher for Pesach kitchen. I don't know if you've seen the really tall building in the centre of Dubai, the Burj Khalifa, which is still currently the tallest building in the world, I think, for now.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the Burj Khalifa, there is a hotel called the Armani Hotel. And back in 2022, it had its own kosher restaurant called Armani Caf.
How much was the Angus steak?
$120. Wasn't cheap.
For a kosher steak. But you got the most stunning view of the big light display and fireworks. It was as good as you could get anywhere.
Sadly, the events of October the 7th, 2023 has had a major impact on what happens in Dubai now. The Al Habtoor complex still has its kosher kitchen, but Armani Caf has closed, as have a couple of the other kosher restaurants. You just have to contact Chabad, and Chabad will organise kosher meals for you as well. Rabbi Duchman, who is the rabbi there, was excellent. Unfortunately, one of their rabbis was killed 2024 by terrorists, but they do wonderful work. Chabad do wonderful work around the world.
We are in love with Chabad. You can discuss their philosophy and so on, but in terms of looking after Jewish people around the world, it's incredible. It's absolutely amazing.
We've met Chabad people in rainforests in Panama, in Uzbekistan, in China. They do wonderful work for tourists, and pretty much every popular resort with Israelis has a Chabad centre there. Food, David. I don't think we've mentioned enough food.
We both keep kosher, whatever that means. We have our own standards, we have our own decisions on what we do, but part of the pleasure of travel is food. It's a major point. You think about if you've gone on holiday, how much time you spend thinking about the food, looking at the menus, and hopefully with good company, or if you're a lone traveller, you know, with a good book or whatever, and savouring food. And so for us, it becomes a challenge because also we're heading off to Central Europe in a couple of weeks. These people want to show us the most incredible strudels or whatever it is. And sometimes we just have to say no. We have a very interesting balance in how we present food as we travel around the world.
Yeah, whenever we do our riders, it always says vegetarian or kosher. And for you, it's vegetarian anyway.
Something that we do in our podcast, and anybody listening to our podcast will know this, is in the middle of each of our episodes, we do what we call a fact file, where we tell you about hotels to stay in, what the weather's like in a destination, the currency, and also where you can get good kosher, vegan, vegetarian food. So obviously a lot of the audience of the Jerusalem Post cares about that issue.
After the rockets in 2021, Dave and I decided we wanted to go up to the Galilee and try and meet some non-Jewish people, some Arabs, because there had been rioting in Bat Yam and Arabs had been attacked, and we wanted to do something to show that Israel was a fun place and we all get on, because that's obviously the truth. So we went with this company called Galilee, who do food tours around different houses. So in one day we had a meal and made meals at a Drew's house, a Christian Arab house and a Muslim house, and it was a really fascinating tour. If you're not worried about kashrut and you're happy to eat vegetarian in somebody's house, this was absolutely fabulous.
Again, the name of the company is Galileets, and if you're looking online, Paul Nyrens is the man who hosts it, Australian guy. If you happen to be in Israel, it's well worth a visit, and nobody has paid us to say that. We really enjoyed that experience.
On the other side of the food spectrum is B'nai Brak. This is just some of the worst food I've ever eaten.
Oh, that potato kugel is divine.
It wasn't, it was oil.
I do now have a high cholesterol problem as a result, but it was unbelievably
Not
good.
as unbelievably good as the calf's foot jelly or fishnogi
Or South Africans call it pachar.
Oh,
Yeah.
good God. But the food tour itself was amazing. We went with a tour guide who took us around B'nai Brak, told us the secrets of B'nai Brak. It's a very close community, and we got a really good insight. We went into the house of one of the Admors, one of the senior rabbis, and his wife gave us the Devar Torah for 20 minutes, thankfully without any pachar or kugel.
Could you remember the name of the tour guide?
Pini Gorilik.
If you're looking for something Thursday nights, it's fascinating to go on a tour of B'nai Brak. Doesn't matter what your views are politically. And Pini Gorilik, he's a Chabad guy. He understands his audience and he understands B'nai Brak. It's really well worth a visit with him. It's a very special experience. The Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition.
White sausage, which we eat for breakfast, with a Weiss beer and a sweet mustard and pretzel.
If your test looks like that, you are in a lot of trouble.
The toilet is open to the public for viewing only.
From Jerusalem to just about everywhere, the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition.
Berlin probably has more Jews than anywhere else outside of Paris and London.
Now, if I remember rightly, because I only looked at it this week, Germany now is about the 5th largest Jewish community in the world, which is staggering.
Mainly Israelis and people from the former Soviet Union.
Yeah.
The community in Munich, we went to Munich, is as large as it was at the start of World War II, but mainly from Russia. We went to a joint Israeli-Palestinian vegetarian restaurant called Canaan, which sadly I found out this week is closing down because they put the rates up. Oz Ben David and Jalil Dabit are from Israel. Jalil is from Ramleh. Oz was from somewhere in the Galilee. They became friends and they run this restaurant, and the food was really amazing. They staff the place with migrants and they try and bring together Muslims and gay people and locals and try and have like a little oasis of peace, which works most of the time. It was attacked in 2024 when lots of things were being attacked due to anti-Semitism. Thankfully, the local community paid for it to be rebuilt inside, but sadly, they can't afford the rent anymore, but they're going on to do other things. Some of the best shakshuka I've ever had. They also have a food truck called Shawarma Mama, which was run by the chef from the Israeli embassy in Berlin, who also happens to be a transvestite who dresses in a pink wig and a dress, cooking shawarma, going around Berlin. Really, really interesting place.
There's a Facebook group called Only in Israel. It isn't only in Israel, it's just Jews and Muslims, and when we go around the world doing incredibly strange things.
Just quickly, 2 museums I would recommend visiting. One is called the Otto Veit Brush Factory, which is kind of like a Schindler's Ark story, Schindler's List. He took in disabled Jews, blind Jews, and they made brushes, and he managed to save 40 or 50 people in his factory during the war. Well worth a visit. The Jewish Museum in Berlin is one of the best Jewish museums I've been to. Prague, the most important thing, obviously, is food. A museum called the Jelinek Slivovitz Museum. There is a factory further north in the country, but the Jeleniks were Jews in Prague who had a Slivovitz factory. You can still buy kosher Jelinek Slivovitz everywhere, including their museum, if you're a fan of Slivovitz. They used to do kosher tastings. This was a kosher tasting with kosher Slivovitz and kosher cheese and everything. I think they just do a regular tasting now, but you can still buy the kosher
It's about
Slivovitz.
2 bridges north of the Charles Bridge. It's on the bridge. Beautiful museum, really well presented.
One of our favourite trips that we went on was Uzbekistan. A couple of highlights from there. The Jewish cemetery in Bukhara It's probably nearly 1,300 years old. Still intact. It has an old mikveh in there. Really fascinating place to visit.
When Mark says an old mikveh, we weren't clear because the guide's English wasn't fantastic. It was either from 8th century or from the 12th century. And think about it, a mikveh for women in a cemetery doesn't compute. The land belonged to the Jewish community before it was a cemetery. The mikvah's in the corner. You know, if you're wandering around Israel or the Middle East, sometimes you'll see these burial spots with a small brick building, stone building with a dome over it. That's what it looked like. And we descended down a little sort of spiral staircase. There were salt crystals, ancient salt crystals on the walls, on the stones inside. I get emotional. When we were in Majdanek and we were at the Mound of Ashes, I cried like a baby. And this was another place where I didn't cry, but I was very emotional because, again, it doesn't matter if you're religious, if you're not, if you're just culturally Jewish, whatever. You standing somewhere where people have kept to Jewish principles and customs for a millennium. It's absolutely incredible, and that it's still there and protected by non-Jewish people who look after the graves for us.
And then we went to Samarkand. And this is the Gumbaz synagogue. Gumbaz means dome. It was built like a mosque, and it has this wonderful blue roof. And the Tomb of Daniel is also in Samarkand.
Well, it's not just in Samarkand, is it?
No, it's also in Syria and
Iran,
and Turkey,
Morocco,
Iraq. Quite a few places where Daniel is buried, but they have the largest Tomb of Daniel.
17 meters long tombstone.
The Kalon Mosque in Bukhara. We went there after dinner one evening, and it didn't look like that.
We had a wonderful guide. He said, I want to take you to see the square at night. We'd already seen it in the daytime. And we got there and it was pitch black. And he looked absolutely devastated. But he happened to be sort of the official responsible for tourism in the area. And he made a phone call. And about 10 minutes later, this poor elderly gentleman, and he looked like he was well over 100, shows up pushing a bicycle. He obviously didn't have the strength to cycle any further. And he walks all the way into the corner to that incredible tower, opens a door, goes in, obviously pulls some giant old switch, and these lights came on.
Just for us.
And it is incredible. If you're listening to this at home and you're not looking at Mark's amazing pictures, then if you go back into the archives on the Jerusalem Post website, you'll see this phenomenal picture of the square. All around are madrasas, the same word as Bet Midrash, places of scholarly learning for Muslims. You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod, or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
The number one country for sending tourists to Bucharest is Israel.
There are many places in Central Europe where Israel is in the top 3 of visitors.
Bucharest has a live and still going Yiddish theatre. We had a wonderful tour of the Yiddish theatre. And again, as David said, it's great to go around Europe and see people working to preserve the Jewish heritage there. They've got no reason to. They're probably not paid very well. In fact, I know they're not paid very well. They're almost volunteers.
Yeah.
But it meant something to them and their family history to help preserve the theatre. Back to Poland, we went to Poznan, we went to Łódź, and we went to a place called Konin, where my grandmother's from.
When he says Łódź, you know it as lodge. But if we're talking properly in Polish, it's Łódź.
One of the first things that greets you in Poznan is this statue by David Czerny, who is a famous sculptor in Central Europe, and this is of the Golem of Prague. David Czerny put this there for the story of the Maharal of Prague because he was born in Poznan. Konin is where my grandmother is from. We got to go to the synagogue, and sadly it's not open anymore. I think they restored it. But it was just really fascinating. One of the things I've loved about this is the chance to walk in my family's footsteps. You'll talk about that in a bit as well. But this was my grandmother's hometown. But what my grandmother's hometown is really famous for is this man. He is called Julius Fromm, and he is the inventor of the condom vending machine. That is Conan's claim to fame.
Conan the Destroyer.
And also, luckily, it is now the centre of nuclear power for Poland. In the middle of Łódź is a massive shopping centre that used to be a factory. It's called Manufaktura, and it used to be run by a guy called Israel Poznański.
Jewish?
ever so slightly.
Okay.
Going round Łódź, you see the influence that Jews had during the war, all their factories. They weren't all Jewish factories, but these massive, massive textile structures. I think they call it like the Manchester of Poland, don't
Yeah,
they?
it rains, but it's predominantly because of where it is in the manufacturing cycle. And the same as in those of you who know Manchester, the buildings that were once abandoned, cotton mills and so on, have suddenly sprung up with new hope, new ventures, education. We went to an amazing film museum there as well.
The family house was on site at the factory and is now a museum, and in there is the Oscar that belongs to Arthur Rubinstein, who's sadly deceased, but he was a native of Łódź. So that's the first time I've ever seen an Oscar in the flesh. We were in the graveyard in Łódź. There is a B'nai Akiva shirt there. It's in front of a memorial to 4 people from B'nai Akiva who went to Łódź after World War II and were murdered there. Do you want to talk about your family town?
Sure.
Briefly?
Both of us are into genealogy. Mark is blessed with a wife who is really seriously into it, and I've also developed a very strong interest in the subject, and as a result of DNA testing and reaching out to people, I've discovered family all over the world. What I can't do that disappoints me is go back in time. I go back 4 generations and hit a wall and can't go further back. But what I do know is that my mother's family was from a town in western Latvia called Libau, which is its Prussian-German name. Today it's called Liepāja, which is the Latvian name. So we made a trip to Latvia. We were looked after by the tourism authorities there. They really cared for us. Before we made that trek, which they agreed to, over to Liepāja, we stopped off in a Holocaust memorial museum set up by an individual Chabadnik who just felt that it was important for him to do in the middle of the area of the ghetto. While we were there, I found the names on a wall of members of my family who were killed in the Holocaust.
The Petav synagogue is one of the, I think, best kept synagogues from that era. Beautiful synagogue in Riga, worth a visit. And the Janusz Lipka house, it's a museum to, again, somebody like Oscar Veit, who saved lots of Jews. He dug down into the cellar of his warehouse 3 floors down and saved, I think, 120 families. There's also a scheme with the Janusz Lipka house where they bring people from Germany and Austria on almost like Sherot Luami on youth experience to be guides there and to learn about what happened during the war. Really interesting place.
Skeda is the beach by Liepāja, and in a couple of days, 3 days, it happened a few times, what they call actions, aktiot, they say in Hebrew. They took out thousands and thousands of people, not just Jews, and they slaughtered them on this beach. I was standing there and knowing that in all probability, given the dates that I found, that members of my family were killed on that beach as well.
Rumbala Forest, not as familiar to people as Babi Yar, which gets mentioned a lot of times in Ukraine. 25,000 Jews were killed here in 9 days, and there is a memorial forest there now.
And this is on the edge of Riga. Again, like Majdanek, where there are houses all around, this was really close to where people were living.
We took a month off after October the 7th, couldn't really do anything. We had this invite to come and see Krakow. We went to the Jewish Community Centre there. Outside the community centre in the street was this Chanukiah. Lots of people there, no worries with vandalism in Krakow, and where everywhere else around the world people were pulling down hostage posters. These were beautifully maintained, kept. No one was touching them. I think before October the 7th, you could walk into the community centre. It was open to the public. They had no fear. After that, they put a security guard on the door. Janusz Makusz is the founder of the Krakow Festival of Jewish Culture. Really recommend going for a few days during the Festival of Jewish Culture.
If you're looking for sort of a religious experience, a religious Orthodox experience, that's not what this is going to be. So, for example, if they have what they say is a Friday night service or an Oneg Shabbat, it's not going to be what you might expect in an Orthodox synagogue. It's going to be guitars, it's going to be musicians, it's going to be dancing. It's an incredible cultural experience, and Jews and non-Jews from across the world, predominantly Europe, gather for this experience. Fabulous.
Janusz has just retired after 35 years. He wasn't Jewish. He called himself the head macher of the Krakow Festival. There is the Galician Jewish Museum, really, really fascinating museum. You've all heard of Anne Frank. They have their own version there, somebody called Renier Spiegel. There is a display of Renier Spiegel's diaries in some ways they're more fascinating than Anne Frank's. This is a cemetery in Lower Silesia in Szczecin, still preserved by the local community. But one thing they didn't do was cut down this tree. And you can see this tree is swallowing up one of the graves.
Something we've seen throughout Europe, particularly in Poland, is young, predominantly young, but not just, people who once a month, small towns in the middle of nowhere, volunteer in the local Jewish cemeteries. These are non-Jews who just believe that the Jewish people were as much part of their society as their ancestors were, and they just go and look after the graves. And it's an incredible thing. And in Szczecin, this town that we're talking about now in Silesia, they do it every month. Very special.
This is the synagogue in Baku, the Mountain Jews Museum. Fascinating museum.
Baku's the capital of Azerbaijan.
You have to take your shoes off to go in, though. Lovely carpets. But one really interesting thing we found was a window in there. It's putting in the last 2 years. It celebrates the Azerbaijani army beating the Armenians in a place called Shusha. There are warplanes flying over and an Azerbaijani flag. Not something you see very often in a synagogue. But the Jews there in Azerbaijan feel very at home. The Red Village, or Kremizi Gazaba, in a place called Guba, about 2 hours north of Baku, and it is the only Jewish shtetl, supposedly outside of Israel, outside of New York.
It's probably about 80-90% Jewish today.
It has a population of 18,000, probably about 4,000 live there, and the rest of them come home for the summer. And it has a lovely mountain village museum. Shanghai. We went to China. There is a Jewish museum in the center of Shanghai, the Jewish Refugees Museum.
Shanghai is one of, say, 3-4 places that have historic Jewish communities. There's Kaifeng, which we know from the 12th century, the 13th century, but basically that community ended, the local people intermarried. There are still some customs in that area where you can detect there are Jewish roots. There were some who moved into Shanghai in the 19th century who were the very, very wealthy Iraqi Jews, some of whom came straight from Iraq, some came through India and opened businesses. We also have the most famous hotel in Shanghai, which is called the Peace Hotel, owned by the
Sassoons.
The Sassoons. That was built by the Sassoon family. But in the 20th century, basically from the year 1900, Jews moved into China from Russia for commerce, not for escape. They moved first to a place called Harbin. They also went to a place called Tianjin, which is about a half an hour away from Beijing. The third wave was the one that maybe you know of, was the Jews from Europe, 20,000 Jews, most famously, the Mir Yeshiva, which is one of the main Talmudical schools, moved en masse from Poland to Lithuania to Shanghai. Remember, in the war period, the Chinese were under occupation by the Japanese. So the Jews moved there, they were welcomed, and then a year, 2 years later, the Japanese came in and they put Chinese and Jews and everybody else into concentration camps in China.
Probably the most famous Jew that was there was Ehud Olmert's father. Ehud Olmert, the former Israeli prime minister, his father lived in Harbin for a period of time. If anybody knows the artist Peter Max, he was also there. Has anybody been to Panama? Panama has a Jewish community of 15,000 people. So a small Jewish community the size of Munich, half the size of Manchester. Manchester has, 7 or 8 kosher restaurants maximum? How many do you think there are in Panama for 15,000 Jews? 50. 50 kosher restaurants. Fantastic community. The Shevet Achim synagogue, one of the nicest synagogues you'll go into. Even the chairs in the Shevet Achim synagogue have been ergonomically designed so that sound doesn't travel when people move them. They got in a specialist acoustic engineer.
You may think this is kind of funny, but if you think about a synagogue, I guess like a church, although church people don't talk, but you go into a synagogue, everybody's at it, right? How many people are actually joining in the service? They designed this knowing that people talk inside a shul so that the individual isn't going to hear if there's noise floating around.
The Panama Canal Visitor Center, like everything else, there is a kosher restaurant at the Panama Canal Visitor Center.
And a mezuzah.
And a mezuzah when you go in. The local kosher supermarket in Panama, about the same size as a local Supersol, if not bigger. Not a small one, one of the big ones out of town. This is just their kosher supermarket. Boquete, I mentioned the rainforest. This is a kosher restaurant in Boquete. There are 50 Jews in Boquete, maybe 100
Maybe
now.
100, yeah.
There's a Chabad synagogue, and they own this restaurant. And it's not just like a little room that they convert. It is a full-on restaurant with probably half an acre in the back as a garden. Just amazing.
The day we showed up, they introduced their new lunch menu. I don't know if any of you have eaten in Chabad dairy restaurants. It's pizza, and that's your lot. This was brioche, baked by locals who've been trained in the laws of kashrut, and the rabbi sits there all day long with them. He is from Venezuela.
Yeah.
They've got Venezuelan dishes. He also has an Ashkenazi side. They've got Polish dishes. This was a very special thing, and you are in the middle of a place where what did we see on the street? An armadillo. We're walking along the street and a little armadillo walks out in front of us. You're in the middle of the jungle.
Vultures flying above you.
The Chabad house is unbelievable. Again, it doesn't matter what your views are religiously, whatever. The mikveh, the women's mikveh. We've got a thing for mikveh, Canada.
You.
I've got a
Please
thing
say
for
you've
mikveh.
got a thing for me.
I did a mikveh without you. In China, I haven't told you yet. In Shanghai, I went to the mikveh. The women's mikveh, if there was a queen and she had a bathroom, this would be it. With counters, with every luxury for before, for afterwards, creams and the sculptures and the fountains outside. It was like going through a Chinese or Japanese garden. It was very special. Before this was built, the woman who is the Rebbitzin, when she needed once a month to go to a mikveh, she either flew 45 minutes to Panama City or had to go to a beach about an hour away and find a secluded cove. They were able to raise the money for this, for a synagogue. They've got apartments that you can rent. They have events there. They're obviously working on the local community, making them more religious. But just for tourists, which is what we look for, this was an incredible experience. And I know I've used a lot of hyperbole about places we've been, but to be honest, I think for both of us, hyperbole is often appropriate.
We were taken there by a company called Panama Kosher Vacations. They will set up your whole trip, the whole week, kosher, even out in the jungle. Chabad had food delivered to us. Shabbat, we were in the Waldorf Astoria, which now has a Shabbat lift. They delivered a Shabbat pack. It was like a whole salmon. There was enough food for 10 people. They delivered a Shabbat kettle, an urn, a hot plate, everything just for the hotel
We
room.
phoned to complain. We said, this is ridiculous. You've given us too much. They said, well, you've got lunch tomorrow as well. It was...
And Sudash shit.
And I checked afterwards with some other people if it was because we're journalists or whatever. They said that's what they do for everybody. Just sitting and meeting people in these countries and saying, yeah, we're from Israel. Let's have a conversation. And understanding, and as I said earlier, being ambassadors for Israel and the Jewish people, we're extremely thankful to our families, to the people that Mark sets us up with around the world for trusting us, and to the Jerusalem Post for trusting us, because it is an enormous responsibility. And as Jewish communities in some part of the world fade away, as synagogues in small villages in Romania crumble, it's up to all of us, the audience in front of us, ourselves, and those who are able, especially in these days where we've got the internet, to tell these stories, because the people who experienced these things way back when aren't with us anymore, and it's up to us to take that forward. The Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition.
It's a very nice wine to pair with food, but you can also drink it just on its own, and that we will do just now.
It's such a pleasure meeting an entire crew that are so smiley, so happy, and so invested in the work that they do.
Welcome in Würzburg, and it's time to let the party begin.
From Jerusalem to just about everywhere, the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition.
Questions? And the answer is no, I'm sorry, we can't take you with next time.
After your most interesting presentation,
thank you.
You've made us all realise how many places we haven't been to. With the Jewish aspects in mind and kashrut, if there's one place you could recommend that we go and visit, where would that be?
I think if you're going on a long distance holiday, I think Panama definitely. I think closer to home, I'd say Latvia was quite interesting.
Why?
The hotel had a Shabbat room.
The name of the hotel?
Was the Radisson Blue something.
It's got a funny name. It's like got Z's in it and B's in it. They have a room behind reception with kosher snacks, with, for those people who care, a Shabbat platter with a Shabbat kettle. This is a non-kosher hotel, but they're catering for us.
It is owned by Orthodox Jews, but also the Peitav synagogue there and Chabad both cater for meals. If you go slightly out of Riga, there's a place called Yermala, which is by the sea. Again, a lovely hotel there, and there's a Chabad there that also cater. I think that was one of the places you could go through and get kosher food really easily throughout.
An amazing recommendation. I'm going to give one which maybe you wouldn't have thought of. I'm not saying it is 5-star, but going on a Mano cruise out of Israel, if you are interested in the kosher experience, is not a bad idea, because you're going to see a couple of destinations, or you can go for 7 or 11 days, see multiple. You have nothing at all to worry about from a keeping Jewish perspective. You want a service, you'll have a service. You want to do Israeli dancing, you'll have Israeli dancing. And they take you to places. Again, is it 5-star? No, it's not. But it's not a bad option.
And if you want to get closer to your Israeli neighbours, just get in the lift on a Mano ship, and you'll see how we all bundle together.
I just want to know if there's a Chabad centre yet on the top of Mount Everest.
I believe there are plenty in Peru, up the mountains, and Machu Picchu and places like that.
Also in Nepal. And don't forget, you've got lots and lots of Israelis who want to have that experience. And one of the most famous experiences that Chabad has anywhere in the world is a Passover Pesach Seder out in the mountains, where you get thousands of people coming together for one evening. And these are usually Israelis, but not just, who have very little connection to anything Jewish, but just want to be together for that one night. Maybe just because it reminds them of their mum and dad, but it's meant to be an incredibly special experience. So in answer to the question about Everest, not far off.
Have you ever visited the Holocaust Museum in England?
The one in Nottingham? No, it was opened I think after I left, but I have met, I think, the Smith family that opened the museum. They used to come and speak at Linwood in England. Really two interesting people, again, not Jewish, who've dedicated their life to telling the story of the Holocaust.
My mum and dad were coming back they'd gone to one of these stately homes that's become a hotel. They went there for a weekend, coming back, they went through Sherwood Forest, accidentally bumped into this place. My mum was a primary school teacher. As a result, she took kids over there. She brought them into Manchester so they could talk about the experiences. Absolutely incredible. These Holocaust museums are all over, not just Europe, they're all over the world, but particularly in Europe, in most unexpected places.
One of the most fascinating museums that we've been to, possibly not with the podcast, but when we were following football around Europe, is the Polin Museum in Warsaw, which is the Jewish Museum of Warsaw. Again, I don't think it's run by Jews. I think it's a municipal museum. I think to really understand the impact of the Shoah, you need to see what Polish Jewry was before the Shoah. And for 2-3 hours walking through this museum, you see the story of how the Polish Jewish community grew to 3 million people. 90% of the community was wiped out.
Another recommendation for a great place to go for a trip, nothing to do with Jewish, if you're okay going to Poland, is to go to Gdansk on the Baltic. It's a stunningly beautiful Hanseatic, if that means anything. It was a German-led commerce organisation that covered much of Northern Europe. So the style of architecture is Hanseatic. But if there's one museum, I think Polin is right up there, the museum Mark just mentioned. If there's one museum to go to in Europe that I think was phenomenal, it's the Solidarity Museum in Gdansk. So when you think about the fall of communism, everybody certainly in the audience here is old enough to remember, and you remember the name Lech Walesa, who led it. It started in the port, in the dockyards in Gdansk. And to see that museum in the place where communism fell is an amazing, amazing experience.
Where would each of you like to be invited to go?
For me, I think I want to go to South America. We had...
hang on a minute, that's a big place.
Yeah, specifically probably Brazil and Argentina. We unfortunately had an invite, which was to go to Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. The flight was booked for October the 18th, 2023. Turkish Airlines were going to take us business class all the way and all the way back. And for obvious reasons, we're no longer flying Turkish and we're no longer welcome in Brazil. Actually, no, I think they would take us in Brazil.
It's irrelevant that we didn't go to Brazil because events that happened on October 7th here obviously were far, there's nothing to compare. But just on a personal level, we were really upset because that's a trip of a lifetime. And again, remember, when we're travelling, we're very blessed that we're being wined and dined and put up in the best hotels and so on. The place that I really, really, really want to go, which doesn't have to be related to the podcast, is New Zealand. I've never been, but I know if there's one place in the world that I would live outside of Israel, it's New Zealand. For two reasons. One, everything I've seen about it reminds me of Britain, about the nature, the mountains, the beauty. And the other reason, and this is a sad indictment of Europe and a sad indictment of the Middle East. One of the main reasons I would like to go to New Zealand is because it is so bloody far from all the crap.
Are you keeping this bit in?
Yeah, I'm keeping this bit in. There's so much pressure. There's so much tension. And not just about Israel and the Palestinians and Iran. Wherever you go, the violence, the breakdown in certain societies, in certain countries, I'm sure some in the audience know exactly what I'm talking about. In New Zealand, I know they have issues. Nowhere's perfect. But I get the beauty and I get the quiet. And I get great wine. What's wrong with that?
This is Mark Gordon from the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
Well, firstly, a big thank you to all of you for coming out on this very rainy evening. To everybody at Hob, Hit Achdut, Olim, Britannia. Did I get that right?
Ole.
Ole. Ole.
Yes. Predictable. Really, a big thank you to you. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then please tell your friends about it. The more people who know about it, the more people who follow, the more people who like, the more people who share. Somebody in the audience just said the more money we get. As they say in Yiddish and Hebrew, halavai, if only. But it's really important for us because if you've been listening to this podcast over the last hour plus, you'll understand that there's something that's very important to Mark and me. It's not just the travel, it's not just the freebies that we get, it's not just the amazing food and the guides and everything. And we didn't even talk in this one about driving on a Formula One circuit at over 200 kilometers an hour. Those things are amazing, those things are special, we're blessed, we get a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Don't forget the zip line.
But we have a mission, and it's a two-way mission. And one way is to show the rest of the world, hey guys, we're Israelis, we're Jewish, we're normal, we don't have horns coming out of our heads, we just like everybody else. And in the other direction, to say there are many shades of human beings out there. There are some that don't like us, there are some that love us, and we need to tell all of those stories. It needs to be the full picture, and that's our duty, I think. Is that fair?
That's very fair, Rabbi. Thank you. Very welcome. Quiz question.
Hang on, wait a minute. Oh, before quiz question, emails and social. Please mail us, markdavidpod@gmail.com.
For social media, for Facebook, for Instagram, for those of you on X, we are at MarkDavidPod.
So please do all of that. It just remains, before we say a final thank you, for Mark to pose the quiz question. So in our live audience, chance for audience participation again.
Who is Netanya named after? Or where does the name Netanya come from?
Several people saying Nathan Strauss.
And who was Nathan Strauss?
Philanthropist. American philanthropist.
Nathan Strauss and his family bought Macy's from the Macy family in the late or the mid 1890s, I think, and that's where their money came from to be great philanthropists for Israel, and that's why you also see a lot of Strauss streets around Israel as well.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. I
Thank
feel
you,
educated.
David.
Folks at home, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, please give yourselves a big round of applause because we really appreciate it.
Happy birthday, David.
Happy 5th anniversary, Mark. Take care until the next time.
Bye-bye.